Hello, and welcome to Megan's Mystical Mashup, a conversation between me and a guest about life, the universe, and anything in between. Welcome to today's show. Today's guest joined the Lightworkers Lab in March of 2018, so not even a year yet, and considers herself an intuitive empath, clairvoyant, and clairaudient, with additional medium and channeling skills thrown in for good measure. She spends most of her time here in the main lab. That's where you'll find her. She lives in my old stomping grounds of Wisconsin with her current life partner, her magical cat, Simon. But she says she is open to expanding to a human companion. No word, however, yet on whether or not Simon is on board with this interest. Best to check, Megan. I've heard things about cats who are possessive of their human. In her past, she was a former counselor and case manager for homeless young adults, which is why that 1919 really resonated with me in terms of that humanitarian aspect. Let's see, and nowadays she's a singer, songwriter, and is working on her own healing modality. Both of those things I really am hopeful that we will hear more about during our conversation. So let's get this party started. Please give a warm Lightworkers welcome to Megan Hawkins. Hi, Megan. Welcome.
Hi, Megan. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's so my pleasure. And look at that. Everything
Yeah,
worked. Yay! Thank you, everybody.
it did. Yes, thanks, guys.
So I'm just curious. What did you think of did you know that today was the 19th of 2019? Had you been
I
paying?
did. In fact, I looked up 19 on Joanne's Sacred Scribes a few days ago. So I was like, this is great. I didn't do 1919, but I did look up 19 and I thought it was so fitting. And I've been excited that this is happening on, yeah, the 19th. This is great.
Me too. I think it's really
Yeah.
cool then that the card that I pulled has 9. I was wondering if it would be 19 because there is a 19 in that deck, but I'm like, oh, 9. But it
hmm
offsets the 1 from January, which is just a 1. So now it's really 19, 19, 19. We've got some extra
Yes.
special energy going on here. I
Yeah.
know, super cool. Well, great. I'm so happy to have you here. Megan and
Thank
I
you.
really met back at the Bliss Retreat last year and had a chance to talk and get to know each other a little bit. And ever since that time, I thought you'd be an awesome person to have on the show. So thank you for agreeing to be here. And why don't we get started? The main question that I start with is
hmm
basically, what's your spiritual journey? And if you can incorporate how your path to the Lightworkers Lab, that'd be awesome. But I really want to hear more than, for most people, that's a more recent thing. And so the
Yeah.
spiritual journey, I think, is really fascinating because everybody's is different and unique. I
Yeah.
guess that's the same word.
Yes. Okay. Well, I think, everybody also has that story where you have your spiritual journey, kind of the big beginning, but you look back at your life at that point and you realize, oh, this happened, when I was in my 20s, or this happened when I was like a little kid.
Mm.
But I guess this kind of current incarnation that I'm in began in, um, um, it began in in 2014, basically. Um, I think that, should I tell you how it started or?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay, of course. Um, it started actually with changing with needing to change my diet for health reasons.
Mm.
And, and I searched and searched, and I was a YouTube user. And, and as I changed my diet and I got healthier and started kind of transitioning out of a health crisis, slowly, the videos I was exposed to or that I was attracted to on YouTube, which is where I learned about a lot of my health modalities that I ended up using, turned spiritual, and and I think it kind of opened me up energetically to kind of cleanse out my body to receive more information.
Ooh.
So I initially started. I'm not as much as a book person as I am a hands-on or visual person. So
Sure.
YouTube is like, love YouTube. It's amazing, and it's free.
Yes.
Um, Yeah, and so many resources, infinite resources. So I know that my oh, okay. So at that point, I wound up finding Abraham Hicks, who I'd heard of from The Secret years ago, but didn't really resonate a whole lot with The Secret, although it was kind of piqued my interest. But then I just don't like I did a deep dive into Abraham, and I was like Abraham every day, and I was kind of pushing myself to kind of heal my physical and emotional body through the teachings of Abraham and through things that kind of came intuitively. And so that came, and then more came, more teachers came. But I was really with Abraham for quite a long time until I found some other teachers. Yeah, with through YouTube, and then eventually I was led to the Lightworkers Lab through YouTube. And I had been following a little bit of Amanda Flaker, who talks about the empowered empath. And that led me to a Trisha Carr Charmed Life episode where she invited us to come to the Lightworkers Lab and check it out. And so I did. And that's how I got to the Lightworkers Lab.
So it was really
But a
through,
whole lot.
oh, go ahead. It was
Oh, go
through
ahead.
Trisha
No,
and
you,
Charmed Life that you were led to the Lightworkers Lab?
yeah,
Okay, cool.
yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
Well, I was thinking, I mean, I think I shared some of this with people at the retreat, but one of the big, I had a lot of opportunities of contrast. Now I know that you don't need a ton of contrast to grow and to expand your consciousness, but for me, that's what it took. And so after kind of finding Abraham in 2014, my mother, who I was living with at the time, was diagnosed with cancer. And that was like a big opportunity to get my spiritual connectedness like really in focus so I could be there for her and guiding her through these steps. The cancer she was diagnosed with had a very low survival rate. So um, we, yeah, really took advantage of bringing spirit into the mix in a major way. And it was so transformative. You might cry, Megan.
Highly possible.
Because I might cry too. But it was so transformative. It was so amazing to see my mom um, grow spiritually during this time. It's just into another person, into, you know, living kind of concepts that she had thought about or heard about, but really living them. And it was just such an honor and a beautiful time. And we got a good year and a half of quality time together. And she just passed in late April of 2018. So she's still around. She's here actually, hanging with me. I
Hi.
called her in. Yeah, she says, hey. So that was a huge part of my spiritual like step up.
Sure.
Yeah, just
Wow.
caring for her.
It seems so intense, but I love to hear how opening to spirituality and new ways of thinking about life can be a transformative experience for both you and your mom in
Yeah.
preparation, in a sense, I suppose, for her passing. That's just
Hmm.
pretty amazing, really.
Yeah.
Thanks for.
Yeah, I was like the spirit energy police. We were fortunate to have a lot of support from some of her friends that she was in a book club with, and so I kind of was thinking, let's all stay in our lane. Let's do what we do best. And so I'm good at personal care and physical care, and then the spiritual stuff. But yeah, I ended up being like the spirit police, like, get the news out of here. We don't need politics right now. Like, I don't care what's going on in the world. She doesn't need to hear about it. We're talking about, feeling good, focusing on the light, focusing on what we have. So yeah, it was amazing.
I love that. I think that's a really important and integral part of healing, especially. I mean, even if it isn't a physical healing, a spiritual healing, that energy police, spirit energy police. I wrote that down. You're going to see that as a thank you for this awesome conversation. Here's the stuff we talked about. That's going to be one of the things in there because I love the way you phrase it. But I think it's such an important piece. And it's something that I wonder how, I don't know how well that's integrated into existing approaches to transition out of life, especially, but even, during that healing process. I love thinking about how we can incorporate energy more into healthcare, into how we, handle health and well-being in general. So yeah, really, that's super cool. Wow. And so, tell me, is there more about, now you had said that there's the path, right? And then there are things that because of that path, you start thinking about, oh, that happened when I was 20 and oh, that happened, and how those things might link. Are you comfortable sharing any of those things that you've noticed today that you didn't at the time?
Yeah, I mean, there are things like I remember maybe around I wasn't raised in any religion. Like, well, I was raised, our religion in my family was like politics. It was like serious religion, the whole family, and going to political rallies every weekend, and but I wasn't raised with religion or spirituality, so it's something I kind of naturally was attracted to, and I look back at things like being a small kid and believing in reincarnation and feeling like that just makes sense. And I remember one particular memory I have, maybe around 7 years old, is this idea that we all come here knowing everything, and learning is just a reminder. We're just remembering. And it's something that I just kind of thought kind of casually. And then I look back, I'm like, I think I believe that still. And then fun things like, I don't know if you ever played this game, Megan, light as a feather, stiff as a board at slumber parties.
Yeah, I do believe we did that.
Yeah. Yes. Well, it was big at a certain time. And I remember really wanting to be the person at the head because I knew that you had to believe for it to work. And I knew that not everybody believes.
Do you want to explain what it is for those who aren't familiar with it?
Sure. Well, it's a game that you play. It's a game where there's somebody at the head. Somebody is lying down, and we have a few people on either side of them, and somebody at the head. Usually, the person's got their head on the main person's lap. You massage their temples, and you repeat some words. You actually you walk them through their death, which is a little morbid in retrospect, but curious kids. And then you repeat these words, light as a feather, stiff as a board. And the aim is to get them to be light as a feather and stiff as a board, and to be able to lift them up with each with 2 fingers. And so I was always like pushing, like I got to be the one who leads it, because I just knew. And actually, it worked one time. I don't know if anybody will believe that, but
I do.
But I believe it. Yeah, it was amazing. I remember her name. I remember her weight. I remember the moment her eyes popped open and she realized what was happening, and she went boom to the ground. We got her about, I don't know, 3.5, 4 feet off the ground.
Wow.
And then she was like, yeah, and then crash. But things like that. And later in life, one of my earlier spiritual teachers was Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist teacher. And so I read a lot of his books. I did a lot of his mindfulness practices. I went to see him a number of times.
Oh, cool.
With my mom, actually, which was really great to do that with her when I was back in my 20s. Yeah, I don't know what else.
That's just super cool that, well, I guess, first of all, I've never pronounced his name before, but Thich Nhat Hanh I'm familiar with, in part because I know he's from Vietnam, and our daughter is originally from there as well. And I just, it's like I want her to be connected to the country as much as possible. And she's already at age 11 exploring spirituality, and just did a presentation on like the meaning, the spiritual meaning of color is what she did it on. And I didn't prompt her. I didn't even know she was doing it until after it was done. And I'm just like, that's so cool. But anyway, thanks for bringing him up, because I have a couple of things that I've looked at here and there. I follow him on Twitter and see little blurbs every now and again. And I have these books that I haven't read. So I'm going to include those in the show notes too for anyone interested. That light as a feather.
I recommend,
Oh, go ahead.
oh, sorry, I was just going to say, I recommend Being Peace.
Mm.
I think Being Peace, well, at least that's my favorite book of his. And I carry that around like a Bible
Oh,
for a good 10 years.
what meaning does it hold for you? Not asking you to quote anything or anything, but what is it that really resonates with you about that?
Well, I don't read it now. I haven't read it in a while, but at the time, I think I don't want to go into the story because it might be kind of a triggering story for people.
Sure.
But there is a story at the beginning of the book about somebody who commits a crime, and it's a crime that most of us would judge as really horrific because it is. And I remember him saying, if you were born into that person's body, into that person's life, into that person's circumstances and their family, you may be like him and you may do as he did. And I remember thinking, I know this is true, and someday I'm going to really feel that it's true.
Mm.
Um, because I still had kind of like the anger at that, the story, at the individual and what he had done. But I remember thinking like, this is the truth, and someday I'm going to really understand it.
Ooh. Thank you for, yeah, that's super powerful. The knowing something's true before you feel it and recognizing that you need both. That
Mm-hmm.
knowing alone
Yeah.
isn't enough. That's
Yeah.
fascinating. Also, just that light as a feather, stiff as a board. What fascinates me about that is one, I had completely forgotten about that until you mentioned it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and then all of a sudden I'm taken back to the slumber party where it worked for us too. We did it
Oh,
slightly
wow.
differently. We did not do the walking through the death part. We did some type of incantation, I believe. I don't remember it
Mm-hmm.
at all probably because it just now came to light. Like, holy cow, we did
Yeah.
this. And we did this with the same group of girls, more than once. We had more than one
Uh-huh.
slumber party together and we did this. And I just remember it working. And that piece about belief is so interesting, and belief as opposed to fear, because it's like you have to believe it
Mm-hmm.
works, but then do you really believe, do you know it and feel it? Because as soon as it works, then
Yes.
everyone freaks out and then the person falls on the ground.
Yes.
Um, and just that sense of amazement, but not knowing what to do with that knowledge because it falls so far outside of what we've been taught is acceptable or believable,
Mm-hmm.
even, that we're not supposed
Yeah.
to, that stuff's not supposed to happen based on what we've learned, in terms of
Yeah.
regular teachings. And so it happens,
Yeah.
and then it's like, what do you do? And then we've been taught that that's bad, but it isn't. you know?
No, no. Our minds are magic. And I think we'll talk about teachers later, but I've been exploring Neville Goddard and the
Oh,
imaginal mind recently. And um, yeah, our minds are amazing and powerful, and we're creators.
yes. Okay, I'm just writing that down. And I cannot do both at the same time very effectively. So there we go. Okay. I used to be really good at talking, writing, and listening. At least I thought I was. I have since become compartmentalized.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, yeah, now it's really more, and maybe it's always been an either or kind of thing for me. But at the time, I
Yeah.
thought I was all that. And now I'm like, no, I really can't do all of that at once. It just doesn't work.
I hear you. I hear you.
So, I'm curious about, well, I'm curious about a lot. Like those stories that you told, how do they impact your awareness of who you are and who you're becoming today, is one question. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Another one really takes us in some other directions around the work you used to do that we mentioned around working with the homeless population, and how you gravitated towards that, and why, or what inspired change in that respect. And
Mm-hmm.
then I have a bunch of others, but I'll wait on those. Answer whatever feels
Okay.
comfortable.
Well, I think I'll start with just working with homeless
Sure.
youth. I think, well, one thing, it was like easy for me. It was like natural. Um, it was an easy job for me to understand. Um, I didn't have a lot of training, but it was just like kind of natural working with people. I've always liked working with, or I've always liked a variety of people, and like the way we come in all different forms from all over the planet and have different lives. And so it was just kind of natural to end up in that space. and it was a transitional housing program for people who were kind of in the gap. So it was for 18 to 22-year-olds. Um, and it was an experience. I think that at the time I was an unhealthy empath. And so, in retrospect, I look back with all compassion for myself and no judgment, but that were I to do that job now, I think I would be a very different counselor and a very different case manager than I was then. But I learned a tremendous amount from the people I worked with and their stories and their resilience and yeah.
I don't know that you knew we had this in common. My first professional job upon moving here to the Twin Cities was working at the Salvation Army in it was a multi-service center that included transitional housing. It also had a detox unit. It had emergency housing. Here in Minnesota, it gets cold. It's cold now, but not as cold as it can be. And emergency housing is really for people who just have to have a place right then and there, but transitional was more like trying to help them into a different environment. And then there was also a treatment program that was a part of it, where people lived in this facility in transitional housing to really help them get on their feet and then hopefully find some type of employment to where they could live independently. And so I was an HR person who hired people like you to fulfill those jobs, but it was also, it wasn't I had also worked in a youth juvenile, it wasn't a locked facility. It was more like a halfway house and things like that. And I also believe I was a fairly unhealthy empath. I didn't know I was an empath. So, it was like, but I really gravitated towards this population who I felt was really underserved and really got to hear those stories and understand how people might end up in that situation. And I also personally felt that in my past, not in that environment before moving here, that line that people can walk between kind of giving in or giving up versus saying, no, this isn't happening. I'm changing this, and it really increased my awareness in terms of, and compassion, I think, for people. But if I were to go back to any of those jobs now, I'd be so different because I, of course, have life experience, but that the whole aspect of understanding empath, what it means to be an empath and how that works with people, it's a pretty important thing to know. And I think I would, because that was a high burnout kind of job. In part probably because we didn't have that kind of energetic hygiene because we didn't have the energetic awareness. And, it's, Yes, I hear you. All of that. Yeah. Well, that's really interesting. So when you left that job, was it intentional that that it was a high burnout job and you just couldn't do it anymore, or had you become...
I burned out actually and had to stop working for a while because I'd always been I'd always been an empath, and I'd kind of grown up in some codependent family relationships, and I'd always been the kind of the therapist, like the family therapist.
Hello.
Yeah. Okay. So I'd been that, and I think that I was probably burned out before I even started the job, just from life and not really knowing. I thought that my purpose was to feel other people's pain and to really help them not feel alone because I'm here and I can feel your pain with you. Oh boy, was I wrong. That's not my purpose.
Yeah.
But I thought that for a while. I learned a lot, and I love my past version of me. She was trying really, really hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was definitely, I was there for, I think, a little over 10 years.
Wow.
And it was in a residential program. And so it was very intense. Like you were never kind of away from anything. You were always in, that space.
So it's not like, so you lived there with them, or you just came during a shift? Excuse me, not to minimize that. It's like...
Oh yeah, no. Thankfully, I had my own house. I had my own home. But I walked to work, and And yeah, I lived near, but it was in San Francisco at the time.
Wow, that's,
Um,
oh my gosh, that's so interesting. Because when I said I
yeah.
recognized the line between giving up and, and gaining determination, that was also in San Francisco.
Really? Oh
Yes.
my God.
We were homeless for a little
Whoa.
while. We
Uh-huh.
camped out in a place you may even be familiar with. I don't know, but it was, well, it was by Girardelli. It was in Girardelli Park, and there were homeless
Uh-huh.
veterans that camped along the hillside of between the bay
Hmm.
and then this hostel. And we stayed there for a
Hmm.
while, my first husband and I, until we could have, we got
Wow.
jobs and we were able to leave that environment, but not before all of our stuff was stolen. Which actually was the day we were going to move to a place. And in retrospect, looking
Mm-hmm.
at the silver lining, we're like, well, at least we don't have to lug all of our stuff to this place, which would be really, cumbersome. So, it's like, all right,
Hmm.
okay. There were things that I was bummed about losing, but we had
Yeah.
passports on us and on our person. So whatever was stolen didn't,
Okay.
you know, impact us in
Yeah.
a direct way where we're like, we couldn't cash a check. Right. So,
Yeah.
we could do all,
Wow.
and it was payday. It was like, so it was just a
Oh,
talk
wow.
about the universe taking care of us. We had to
Yeah.
have that experience, or at least I know I did. I assume my first husband did too, but we never really talked about
Hmm.
it during the course of that relationship. So it
Yeah.
was just interesting that both of us were in San Francisco. Maybe it was even during the same time, who
Yeah.
the
Wow.
small world stuff. I love that.
Hmm. Hmm.
But so, let's talk more about what you're doing now. The
Hmm.
singer-songwriter part is awesome, and then
Hmm.
the healing modality that you're working on. If you're comfortable sharing, because it's in progress, you're
Hmm.
in development, and I understand if you
Yeah.
don't want to say too much about it, but
Yeah.
maybe what led you to even recognizing that you want to create your own modality.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll start with the music because it's easier. And the the music is I've always been a music fan since I was like a little girl, and I was lucky to have parents that listened to music from like all over the world. And so I remember just sitting with records and playing all sorts of stuff from just all over the planet and the United States as well. Um, and I was really attracted from a young age to really like melancholy songs like Blue Moon, You Saw Me Standing Alone, like all this stuff. And so when I got older and I started writing music and recording music, I started like a one woman band. I won't name the band because I don't want you looking it up.
I
But I was
will.
doing that for, yeah, I was doing that for some years. Only French people liked it. It was very bizarre. All my fans were French, which was interesting. But the music was a little melancholy, it wasn't sorrowful. In fact, I look back on it and there were a lot of spiritual components because I write like I guess freestyle. I don't, more than anything is I kind of will sing spontaneously and record, and then that's
Wow.
how the songs come. Um, and so some of the songs I really like, and I've reworked some of the lyrics to kind of fit who I am now and my perspectives now. But as I have changed my perspectives and also recognize what my brain likes and what my spirit likes, my musical consumption has completely changed. Like I a couple years ago, when creating like my Spotify playlist, I eliminated anything that didn't raise me up in some form or another. And it doesn't. I also listen to a lot of things where they don't speak English, so then you can assign your own um, meaning to the song. So even if it is a sad
Yep.
song, I don't have to hear it that way. Um, but I've really changed a lot of music that I listen to and really let go of anything that didn't make me feel good, like in my gut, in my belly. If it didn't make me feel good, it didn't make me feel like a sexy woman or make me feel strong or whatever it is, it was like out of there. And so that same thing happened with my music is like, how am I going to write? Because I kind of write from this kind of like dreamy, wishing, you know, way. And now I don't feel that way and I don't think that way. And kind of accepting some of the new music that I am kind of compelled to create, which doesn't even sound like music that I would listen to, but neither did my old music. I liked singing it, but it wasn't my genre. It was just It was
Interesting.
just me. Um, but yeah, so I think now it's much more simplified and it's much more energetic based. Um, but it's new. It's really new that I've allowed myself to actually record. Like I stopped singing for a number of years completely, and it's only been recently that I've started doing it again.
What
So we'll see what that.
what inspired you to get back into it?
I think it's just I don't know. I don't know if there was a conscious inspiration. I think that I need it. Like I talk. I need to talk. I'm a very verbal person, and so singing is just an extension of that.
Mm.
And it's also um, it's a powerful. I didn't realize when I would write before that I was working things out. When I would sing, it's kind of like it's a like a meditation, but also a therapy session or a cleansing, an energetic cleansing. It could be all of these things or some of these things. And so I think recently I've been more okay with the fact that my music doesn't sound anything like my old music does, or like even music I would think I would like, and kind of stepping out of my own way and not judging it
Mm.
as corny, because it could be kind of corny. It's very spiritual, mushy stuff, for lack of a better word.
I, of course, have to ask. I just have to ask.
Mhm.
Okay, one of two things. One is any chance you're willing to share something with us to add to the show notes, either of your own or maybe, if that's not comfortable for you, of your Spotify list, because I know a lot of people are inspired by what other
Mhm.
people, or, just haven't found music that resonates as much with them as maybe something somebody else is listening to. But
Yeah.
I personally would love to hear something you've done because I'm
Mhm.
just, intrigued, but I have every belief that it's amazing as well. So, and if it's spiritually
Well,
corny,
let
all the
me.
better.
I'll think on it. I can definitely share anything from Spotify. I think like right now, everything I have is freestyle with no music added, no editing,
Mm,
no. My voice is fine. I don't sing because I've got an amazing voice. I just sing because it comes from the heart.
right.
So I might have something.
That's,
So I'll have to listen to it and see if I'm ready to share it.
yeah, and no pressure at all, but I just felt I had to
Yeah.
ask because you're here and you're talking about something that I'm sure I'm not the only one really intrigued to hear this.
Mm.
In the freestyle approach, I put down intuitive freestyle because it sounds to me like you're not
Mhm.
writing down a song and then looking at the lyrics and singing it. It sounds like you're singing
Mhm.
what comes to the heart in the moment, as it comes, and that is amazing. The fact that
Mhm.
you have become so attuned to to the present, to be able to hear. I don't know if you're hearing it or if how do you. Is there a process? How do you know what to sing? I mean, I know I'm asking
Well,
this knowing
actually,
intuitive,
yeah,
how that kind
yeah.
of works, but go for it.
Well, actually, now I'm remembering that I was like, I received a message to follow my
Oh,
song. And so actually, now I'm remembering that when I started singing it a few months ago, I would start singing about how I'm following the song because the song will lead me to where I want to go. Like I got the message, like, follow the music and it will lead you where you want to go. And I just took that as like a directive, like, okay, I'll just do that and we'll see what happens. And so for a while, that's how I would start singing. I would just start singing about how I'm following the song because it's leading me where I want to go.
mm,
And then it would lead me where I wanted to go. Then the words would come and that's the process. Or sometimes it's
wow.
just singing a melody and or humming a melody or thinking about something or being in kind of a prayer meditative state and wanting to realizing that singing is just it feels so good. It just feels good in the body.
It does.
Um, so yeah.
It's another thing that you and I share, but not directly in that I don't record anything that I do and I don't create music. I used to create music on a piano. I don't have a piano,
Mm.
I have a keyboard, and it's not the same. It doesn't
Yeah.
have the tension and stuff like that, this particular keyboard. But
Mhm.
I use music as well. I find music to be a great healing and energy shifting I don't want to call it a tool because it's more than that to me. There's a spiritual aspect to it. Today is a day where I haven't done what I normally do before the show, which is play a couple of songs and sing along to them, because one gets me into the, it gets me energized, but I've had enough caffeine that that's not a problem today. But also really just sets my mind in this space. So like I play Love is Mystical because I love that song by, what is it, Cold War Kids. But it's just a neat, the way that the words in that resonate with me, and it matches mystical mashups. So it helps me to get my head around what I'm here to do. But I sing in the car. I, unlike you, also listen to music that is maybe more, like heavy metal or grunge sometimes. And I do it to match the mood I'm in, to help bring me out of it. So I try to create playlists. I mean, I have a bunch of different playlists, but one of them is one that starts really grouchy, for lack of a better word. And then but songs where I know all the words, so I can sing to every single one of them. And then I have different lengths of playlists too, but there's like, if I'm driving and I'm in a bad mood, then I start out with that, and it works up to something where it's positive and happy, and it lifts my spirits. And I love doing that. I'm a big proponent of it, because for me, if I'm in a bad mood and I listen to something really cheerful, it just pisses me off. I mean, it makes me worse. So it's like, I am not one of those people who take solace in really comforting music when I'm not in that place. Maybe some people are, but I just love that strong attachment to music. I will not ever record anything that I sing. I grew up in choir, but never a soloist, kind of, that's been my scene. I love to sing, but only as a cathartic, energizing thing for personal use. So any of you interested, you're not getting anything from me.
Oh man. I feel like there are so many singers that don't have technically great voices that are amazing singers because of what they're singing and how they're singing. So it's nice to sound pretty, when you sing, or sound good, or sound the way. But I think, the feeling. But I understand. And it's interesting that you're talking about the journey of music. I did that for a period, especially if I was depressed. I would start with some like sad Nina Simone, or some
love Nina Simone.
Some sad political Bob Marley that just made me just mad at the system, and then weep, and then move the vibration up, raise, shift the song until you get to that place. Because you got to cleanse. You got to cleanse it out sometimes. Yeah.
And that's what it feels like. It's like, for me, I listen more to angry music than weepy music. And I just, that just now hit me, because that is how it's like I hold a lot of anger still, and I'm not exactly sure. Well, actually, I probably have some idea why, but it's how I release it and vent it. For crying, I watch tearjerker movies because it takes more than just the song to get me there. Or actually, I think it's that I have a hard time getting myself to listen to the weepy music, because I know it's going to invoke that emotion, and I still haven't gotten to the point where that is, even though I cry all the time, I think a part of that sometimes is because I blocked that emotion from occurring freely. And so it's like, I'll go to a movie, sometimes one that I haven't watched, because then I can trick myself into thinking it's going to be something else. So that I can, it's like I'm playing these mind games with myself, knowing I'm doing it, but it seems to work for me sometimes, at least.
Yep.
Oh, well, I'm so glad
Very
you brought up
cool.
Nina Simone. She came to me when you had said that a lot of people who liked your music were French. It just made me think of her, and I have most of her CDs. I haven't listened to her in a while, but just love her music.
She's powerful. Yeah.
Have you?
I used to I love to see old timers. Like I saw Tito Puente. I've seen Willie Nelson like a ton of times, and Hugh Masekela I saw a lot, and I just loved going to see the the older musicians. And Nina is one of the ones I missed before she passed.
Yeah. That would have been an amazing concert too. I've never seen her live. Well, I've never seen her not alive either. But did you ever watch the movie with her? I think it was Zoe Saldana. who played her. I think there was some backlash because she darkened her skin, but I didn't see
Oh
the movie to.
yeah. I think I did, but the other thing that happened during my spiritual kind of awakening is like my whole ability to watch movies. I used to be a big movie buff, and I just and I liked the sad, gypsy movies and the sad French movies and the sad, I love that stuff. And and now even and I never really liked funny movies. They kind of depress me for some reason. They still do. Like comedies just aren't very funny to me usually. Um, so yeah, so I don't I have a lot of movie history, but I don't really watch movies anymore very often, except for documentaries about like mountain climbing. I'm totally down for
I
because
love those
those are
too.
they're
Yes.
amazing. I
I'm,
can't wait to see Free Solo.
oh
I
my
haven't seen
gosh.
it yet, but Free Solo looks like it's gonna be mind blowing.
Do you know what it is you like about those movies?
I like watching people because it inspires me to be more courageous.
Mm,
I like watching people who are living their life the way they want to live their life
yeah.
and who are doing, yeah, who are doing things that may be crazy to other people, but they're like, well, this is how I want to do it. This is what I want to do. I like watching people with passion
Mm,
and focus.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
I enjoy those. There was a time when I watched every mountain climbing movie or documentary as well as movies that I could find, and
Hmm.
at some point noticed I was on this pattern. I didn't even realize I was doing it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like all I want to watch. And I think it had to
Yeah.
do with finding their passion and going all in, because you cannot
Yeah.
climb a mountain half-assed. You really just
Mm-mm.
can't. And
No.
that perseverance and problem solving aspects too, and how they really, it's like their goal was to get to the top, but there was so much
Hmm.
more involved with that. But also, I had heard this statistic a long time ago that I don't remember exactly what it is, but it's like the majority of deaths that occur in mountain climbing occur on the way down, on the descent. And I
Mm,
was very
mm,
fascinated by that because it was right after I finished my doctoral program, I got my degree, and then it was like,
mhm,
now what? It was like I was out of this
mhm,
program, which was cohort based, so we did it with a group of people, but we
mhm,
finished all our classes, and then we were kind of like, okay, you're on your own. And that's when you had to
mhm.
do the dissertation, which was like the hardest thing to do. The classes
Yeah.
were easy compared to the dissertation and like all of the stuff involved with that, and then reaching that goal, and it's like, now what? And it really got me to thinking. In fact, I still, that was a life-changing thing for me to recognize that the goal, if you achieve a goal and it's this big goal like climbing a mountain,
Mhm,
what do you do from
mhm,
there? Because
mhm,
and I can completely understand why most people, if that statistic is true, why most people, die on the way down, especially Mount
yeah.
Everest. One is because they've reached the
Yeah.
goal, so they're not trying as hard, but it's also,
Yeah.
they're also tired, but
Yeah. They're exhausted.
yeah,
Because it's all adrenaline getting up there at a certain point, I would imagine. It's just like that focus and that drive,
yeah. And
and
then you're
then the
like,
body catches up.
yep, very much
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Well, it's just amazing to me that we have these really interesting similarities that we never knew about. It's like just
I know. How cool.
it's got to be
I
the
love
Megan
it.
thing, right?
Right? I know. Megan and Megan.
We also have a shared interest in words, which we learned
Yes.
earlier, and just the
Yes.
whole meaning and power and energy behind words and choosing those words and the importance of
Hmm.
that. It's just
Hmm.
something I still. It's so funny. I'm very much in that space, yet I find myself slipping every now and again. Like need, I really don't like using that word, but I do because it's easier and I can't always
Yeah.
find a replacement. And
Yeah.
it's like, okay, well,
Yeah.
even people who, it's like, yeah, I have this understanding of the power and energy of words, but it doesn't always mean
Hmm.
that I can follow that easily.
Yep. I hear you. Recently there was some controversy around the song Baby It's Cold Outside,
Oh yeah, yeah,
and people were changing the lyrics.
yep.
And I was like, that's so funny because I changed the lyrics 2 years ago to that song. But I didn't politicize it. I actually made it the woman was like, let's go outside because it's beautiful out. She was just explaining like, why are you trying to stay inside where it's cozy when we could go outside and have like an adventure? We can always come back later and
Mm.
that was so that was my version of it. Which
Well,
at the point I wish I'd put it out there because I liked it.
well, yeah. I mean, I tend to like to change the words because it's funny. Um,
Hmm.
like this one I didn't do, but there was a Creedence Clearwater Survival song. Um,
Hmm.
uh, there's a Bad Moon on the Rise, and this
Yeah.
one guy in college, I think he actually thought these were the words, but he said there's a bathroom on the right. I'm like, I love that. And so now I
There's a
kind of seek
bathroom
those
on the right.
opportunities to do it. There was one
Yeah.
Aerosmith song, Sweet Emotion, and I was a screen
Uh-huh.
printer at the time. And doing that, you put this emulsion on a screen in order to be able to burn an image onto it. And so I used to sing
Uh-huh.
Sweet Emulsion. It's
Uh-huh.
like I just suit them, change them to suit my whatever's going on. But I love changing
Yeah.
words in general just
Oh, that's
because,
fun.
let's make it funny. I do that a
Yeah.
lot anyway with, like my daughter will say something and I'll say, what? I have big ears. I mean, just like or also these songs that are coming on, we listen to Sirius radio in the car,
Hmm.
and she likes
Hmm.
Hits One, which is not my favorite at all.
Hmm.
Um, but there are songs where it's like, okay, so one person sings, I love that bass, right? I can't remember who,
Hmm.
Megan Trainor or somebody does that song.
Yeah.
And which is how I know her name. Um,
Hmm.
but
Megan.
but I'm
Yeah.
like, something about that bass. Why is she singing about bass? My daughter's like, it's bass, mom.
Yeah.
But
Oh, that's
I
good.
figure it's a really small way to do expansive thinking, um,
Hmm.
techniques, because it's like, hey, look,
Yeah.
there's this word and it has more than one meaning, even if and it's
Hmm.
pronounced differently, but it's spelled the same way. Why is that?
Hmm. Hmm.
But
And from now on, I'm going to be singing "There's a Bathroom on the
I
Right."
know that one
I
that's
love it.
stuck with me for decades now because it was so
Yeah.
funny. And
Yeah.
he was like, that's not those aren't the words. And it's like,
Hmm.
no, because of course
Hmm.
I had to know it was about the moon. Um, you
Yeah.
know, but um, okay, well, so we talked about music and the healing stuff. Is there so I don't want you to disclose anything that you're not comfortable disclosing, but I'm really curious about that path to discovery of just that there's a need for a different healing modality or something that really needs to fit personally with you.
Yeah. Well, it's something that I realized that I've been doing lately. And then I kind of got, um, it's hard to explain. Well, I'm going to start with this. On Christmas Eve, Crystal Ann Compton um, did a live in the lab, and I watched the entire thing. And somebody asked her a question that was resonant with me. And one of her answers was, and listen to Neville Goddard, Neville, 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 Neville. Like she was like, just soak it in, like feeling is a secret. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to listen to Neville Goddard. So I've been listening to Neville Goddard nonstop since Christmas Eve, and it's totally changed my
Ooh.
world. And so much of the focus is on believing, is on can you believe it? And it's kind of like having the audacity, there's that book, The Audacity of Hope, but the audacity of belief.
Mm.
And so I'm a talker, obviously, I talk a lot. And I do a lot of audio journaling because it's just a good way I can kind of sound off. And I do also channel my higher self through talking.
Mm.
And so I found myself asking, well, I don't think I can get into it because it's so not complete,
Sure.
but it's kind of a question and answer process
Ooh. Yes.
with the higher self or with, yeah, for me, it's with my higher self. But it's kind of a question and answer process and kind of the big question is why am I really feeling this way? Why am I really responding this way? Because so many times we
Mm.
have, triggers to people and we think it's that person, but really we're forming beliefs or we have beliefs in our mind and we're shaming ourselves. Um, it's kind of complicated, Megan. I don't know if I'm making any sense right
You're
now,
totally making sense.
but
To me, it's about
yeah,
mindset, and the mindset we have is one that we have formed based on filters we
yeah,
created without any knowledge. But it's those filters are
right.
unique to us based on our experiences and perceptions
Hmm.
and self-identity that's formed through that, and that all solidifies
Yeah.
beliefs that were earlier formed, but now
Hmm.
become more solid, and then it's hard to see
Yeah.
outside of those. I think
Yeah.
that what you're saying makes perfect sense in terms of is this what's the real thing going on here? It breaks
Yeah.
through those that facade, that I
Yeah.
think is mindset.
Yeah. And with so much compassion for ourselves and lack of judgment for however we feel. If we feel angry, if we feel sad, if we feel hurt, whatever it is, to not be in judgment of it,
Mm-hmm.
I think is like really important. So I won't go into the modality itself, but when I was doing it, I got the message, oh, and Megan, this is a modality.
Mm.
And I'm like, really? And I also got the message, and don't make excuses for why this isn't a modality or why this wouldn't work for other people. You can make the excuses, but don't live the
Mm.
excuses. Like it's a bunch of baloney. Um, so yeah,
Because you're the kind of person who overthinks things. Is that why that message came
yeah.
through?
Can you relate?
I totally.
Yeah, and you're kind of like, well, and I'm like, I'm over it. I'm over defeating myself with judgment or assuming that because it works that it's coming from me that it's not good or it's not amazing because so many people create amazing things and I'm a people.
Yeah,
So, and I'm a
exactly.
creator.
That's
So,
right.
why not let myself create?
That must feel, I mean, I know that feeling personally, and I'm doing that. I mean, that actually, I just had a thing, a dream this morning
Hmm.
that was life changing, and a part of it
Hmm.
the dream itself was scary as hell, but what I took from the dream was life changing and empowering, and goes to this, you know, I tend to overcomplicate things and make huge barriers that really don't exist for myself to progress.
Hmm.
And more, I'm just giving that up. I was listening to somebody the other day, not somebody in the Lightworkers Lab, but who had said that I think she said every morning when she wakes up, but for me, it's almost better to do it at night or maybe both. She gives all of her problems to God, but she writes them down like,
Mm.
I'm giving you this, I'm giving you that, I'm giving you this, I'm giving you that. And now God can be whatever and whoever to us. And that's actually something that she had said too, but for her, it's God. But I
Yeah.
tried that last night.
Hmm.
I didn't write it down. I just said, I'm giving you all this stuff. Okay. I want
Hmm.
to release it from
Hmm.
my own energetic realm. It's still there, in some respects, but I don't need to spend my night dreaming about it.
Yeah.
And I did that, and I had this big dream that
Hmm.
ultimately, where I think I was challenged to put some of the lightworker stuff that I've learned together and take action. And I took
Wow.
significant action without thinking about it. And it was
Hmm.
like I called in angels, I did this stuff, and I did this thing. I don't want to go in depth
Hmm.
because it's kind of a scary dream,
Mm.
but it helped me to, that release thing was like, I've never done that before. It never even occurred to me to do that because I've always held my own problems, and that, it's just
Yeah. Yeah.
I've always been that person to, I don't really talk much about it, stuff going on with me to other people. I'm more the person who listens
Hmm.
to other people's
Hmm.
things.
Hmm.
And so to have somebody to even give that to, or, some spiritual element to give that to, felt really good at the time, but it really opened me up in just a night. So it's
Yeah.
like
Wow.
I'm still sitting with that because it's like this morning I started prepping for the show, and I'm like, oh man, I want to
Yeah.
really, dig in. I want to do the show, so don't get me wrong, but it's like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm not always the most patient person.
Hmm.
That's why I ran a little
Hmm. Hmm.
behind schedule today too. But anyway, so I think,
Wow. That's amazing.
well, that piece about handing things over and writing it down, I want to write it down. I
Yeah.
think that's a really
Yeah.
beneficial thing. And that is
Hmm.
just, I think it's a way to release those problems from being as significant.
Hmm.
There's still important problems or issues, but I like co-creating or collaborating on how to resolve those, and get, it's
Yeah.
a way to get more guidance and direction as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
And so it sounds really simple. And now I'm kind of like, well, probably a lot of people do that. But at the same point, it was just, I had never heard it. And I'm like, well, that just makes perfect sense. Cool.
Yeah, and also I found like the most profound shifts and changes are actually really simple.
Mm.
I think because things are so simple, we dismiss them.
Yeah.
You know, speak of words and there are all these different, I forget what it's called, but different sayings that say these things that sound trite,
Mm.
but they're actually, you know, divine messages, but we hear them so much we can kind of take the power out of them.
Like,
So I think sometimes oh, sorry, go
oh
ahead.
no, go for it. I was going to
Well,
say one.
oh, I want to hear it.
No matter where
Yeah,
you
tell
are,
me.
there
I want
you
to hear
are.
it.
No matter where you are, here you are. Or no, no matter where you go, here you are. It's,
Yeah, everywhere you go, there you
yeah.
are, or something like
It's like,
that.
if
Yeah,
you really delve into that, it's about being present.
yeah, yeah. You can't escape yourself.
Right.
You can't escape no matter how hard you try, no matter what you do, you can't escape yourself. Yeah.
So true.
Hmm.
Well, so what are you so you're doing the modality and really trying to develop that. Are you working with people yet? Are you doing are you are you like a go-to healer for friends and family, or what's keeping you busy?
I, well, because I was that for so long, I've actually like whoosh,
Mm,
backed off. Except for prayer. Like I definitely feel like I've got a different understanding of prayer, and I had a number of people in my life over the past month who have had really extreme things happening within their lives and within their families. And so it really put me in a place of really wanting to be in kind of a 24-hour state of prayer almost. I mean, still living my life. I'm still eating and doing things and, you know, bathing and all that good stuff. But being in prayer, I mean, right now, I'm in a lot of transition. I had been living before I moved here. I'd been living in California for most of my life, for my whole adult life, and still trying to figure out like where I want to live and where I want to be. And so right now I'm still working
mm,
on healing my physical and mental health, so I can be the person I want to be. Um, and I'm trying to be like God, or like my idea of God, because I feel it's my belief that we're all God,
mhm.
and we're all pieces of God. And so you know, my goal for a long time is to really live it, and embody it and feel it. So it's kind of like I'm kind of in a little bit of a nesting period where I'm just really working on myself.
I have to say, I have been in that place too, but I've seen and read in the lab, especially, a lot of people. I mean, this is, in the United States, regardless of whether you get snow or not, which, where we're at, we're not, even though we normally do, but that it's winter. It's kind of we have shortened days. We have, I'm noticing this cycle, even though it makes perfect sense that it's probably been there for a really long time, but of this almost strong desire to hibernate. And by hibernate, I don't mean crawl under a rock, but I mean to reflect and to really spend time and space on getting clear on what's important for me and getting aligned with those things. Alignment for me is a
Yeah.
really important thing that I feel is always one or two steps ahead of where I'm at. It's like I
Hmm.
can kind of
Hmm.
see it and almost reach it, but not quite. But this year actually feels
Hmm.
like I may reach it. It's my intention to reach that. But this
Yeah.
time, and especially if you're a person who celebrates the holiday season and things like that, it's like that's a really busy time, especially with
Hmm.
kids, but not only with kids. And it's
Hmm.
like I decided my New Year doesn't start until the Chinese New Year or Vietnamese New Year does. That's
Okay,
seriously, you
another
too?
every year. That's my favorite holiday. I was actually just giving thanks for that holiday. The Lunar New Year
Mm.
is that's always when my New Year starts for the past, I don't know, 15
Oh, good
years
for
or
you.
so. So that's really trippy, Megan.
Well, I think it was 1 or 2 years ago when I declared that that's my New Year. And then I kind of forgot this year. I don't know why that is. But then I'm like, no,
Hmm.
wait, this is not New Year. Because I don't have time to, during the course of the Christian New Year or Christian Christmas and stuff like that, and New Year. We don't really celebrate Christmas conventionally, but we do in terms of presents and Santa Claus, and the religious aspect is incorporated into it for our daughter to understand. But it's like, then there's New Year's, and it's a part of that overall holiday. And it's like, well, I haven't had any time to do any self-reflection to get centered and really understand what I want for this year. And I'd much rather wait until February. I think it's February 5th this year, maybe. And I like that. I like that so much better. It's freeing. And I totally forgot that it was also I was thinking about, we have friends and non-blood related family in Vietnam that celebrate Tet, as they call it. And so we're aware of it from that perspective, but I completely forgot about the lunar aspect. And now it makes perfect sense that I'd gravitate towards that because I'm, moon oriented, let's say. Definitely.
Me too.
Feeling the lunar eclipse, feeling the full moon right now, but, and actually I think it works well. I enjoy, it's more, we don't have a whole lot of time to get into this part, but something that I really want to better understand how to do is to live within those cycles that feel more natural to me in an energetic sense in a world that doesn't recognize those cycles. So like we have school schedules and we have work schedules and we have life schedules and things that have to happen on, very consistently. And I am just not comfortable with a high level of consistency and structure. I ebb and flow. And it's like really hard when I'm in an ebb to do those high level expectations that are so consistent, and yet especially those where I have to really show up for. This doesn't count because this is fun for me, and I always have the energy for this show, but there are other aspects where it's like, oh my gosh, I can't do this.
Yeah, it's like, get me out of the matrix.
Yes.
That's how I think. I'm like, get me out of I just want to live in a natural way that's organic with myself, with the moon, with the seasons. Yeah.
Well, so it's like, well, let's collectively come up with a way to do that. I'm ready.
Yes. Yeah.
But
it's one of my future goals is to live in a place in a communal place, in a place that's very natural and very connected to the land. And
I have to tell you, so this is where the Megan, the individual has some inner conflict with family because we're not all in that same place. My daughter and I are a lot more in that same place, but my husband isn't quite there. Quite is actually not the modifier. He's not there. And but I have personally been really drawn towards the idea of a collective or communal place where life operates differently. Not a cult, which some people automatically go to because those are communal as well in terms of, different ideologies and things. But I just want a more natural way of living. I have for a long time been frustrated around the concept of time, the linear time, right? That we have to count every minute and every hour and every, week and all of that. Forgot about the day. And also with money and how money operates and the purpose behind money. And are there, the more natural way of exchanging energy that was before the onset of all of these things that we become so accustomed to and conditioned to, I think is a better word. I
think there.
Oh no, keep going. Go.
No, sorry. Well, I was just going to say, I think there are a lot of us who are feeling that. There's a lot of people who are creating these different. There's the whole tiny house movement. There are, people doing earth ships and alternative building and building communities that aren't based on, that aren't cult-like, that are basically let's share this land. Let's share the work that we do together. Let's have a community, which is really just the natural way for humans to live. And that's not how we currently live. And that's not how everybody wants to live or how everybody should live. But I think that there are more and more people who are drawn to this and who are creating it.
Yes.
So I think it's really hopeful. It's a really hopeful time that people are kind of reconnecting with I mean, just like if you look at the amount of people who are awakening across the world, and it's just like
Droves.
incredible. Like this time is just, there's massive shifts happening right now, and it's very hopeful and exciting.
I would agree completely. Um,
Hmm.
so we have just about 3 minutes left. I just, I
Wow.
know it goes fast, doesn't it?
Yeah. I was nervous before, but
What?
but this was fun. Nobody should be nervous. If they're going to do this with Megan, you're great, Megan. This is great. This is easy.
Well, thank you. I want it to feel like a conversation, so we just have a
Yeah.
conversation. And thank you for saying that because I know that some people who, before they come on the show, are very nervous. And I hope
Hmm.
that they, I mean, the feedback I've gotten is that it's fun and engaging and they enjoy it. So, anybody
Yeah,
interested
and
in
I
coming on the show, keep that in mind and certainly reach
keep
out
it in
because,
mind. And about a month ago, I actually considered canceling because I was really terrified. And then I thought, I kind of took it as a holistic, like, Megan, like, don't hide. You don't need to be afraid. If it goes terribly, that's okay. I didn't expect it to go terribly because I trusted you, and
thank you. I
but I
appreciate
even
that.
that but I did give myself permission for it to go terribly and to not care if it did, and that helped me to show up.
That's a really good thing. I'm sitting here looking at this timer that says 2 minutes left, but I started it before we actually started the show. So we have seven.
Oh, cool.
So
Okay,
not that that's a
what should we
lot
talk
more, but
about?
yeah. Well, I love the idea of giving yourself permission. And I have to say, this is where I'm not always strong in trusting my intuition, but more and more I'm recognizing that it's so ingrained in me that um, I just have to listen and know naturally that it is intuition, even though it's not saying this is your intuition talking. But I sensed that fear in you. And, I think I even asked
Mm.
somebody, it's like, just in case, could you be a backup? And, and because I didn't want to reach out that, I think that was, for me, it was around the holidays. And I'm like, I don't know.
Mm.
I'm feeling this thing.
That's what I was thinking about. I was like, I don't know. What am I gonna? I was totally, yeah, you got it. That's great, Megan.
Wow.
You picked up on it.
But it's for me the interesting thing. This is really just like over the last week or so, where it's like I think that for me, finding my spiritual gifts is more like acknowledging that they've always been there, and I've known they've always
Yeah.
been there. I look back to times when it's been really apparent, but the day-to-day stuff, like yesterday, my family and I took a tour of a couple of schools that my daughter may be going to next year. This is a really interesting thing for parents and going to look. She currently goes to a school for kids with some learning challenges and she's transitioning out. And so going around and looking at public schools and private schools and all the things that might be best for her, it was really just fascinating to me in general because it's been so long since I've been in that environment outside of her own schools. Um,
Mhm.
but we were taking this tour, and they were the guy was talking about all these different things, and I lean over to my daughter, and I'm like, "What language might you be interested in taking?" And right after I asked her that, because she likes to have preparation for questions before she doesn't like to be put on the spot for questions. Who does at 11, especially by adults?
Yeah.
But right after I asked her that, the guy giving the tour asked her that. And I'm just like,
Mm.
it was like I was leading this tour. I guess I tapped upon a couple of things
Yeah.
that this guy was about to say too, because he kept looking at me funny,
Mhm.
because I'm like, hey, this, and he's like, yeah, as a matter of fact, that's something I lead, And I'm like, oh, okay.
Uh-huh. Oh,
And
wow.
it's like,
Hmm.
it's so embedded that I just don't even realize it. And so what I love about the Lightworkers Lab, and a plug for the Psychic Development Circle as well as practicing those skills, is making me realize that um, my process is so ingrained that to really segment and try to figure out, wow, am I a medium? It
Hmm.
is adds a whole other dimension to the gifts, right? Because it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I've always been intuitive. I've always followed my intuition. And then more recently, gotten away from that. Not more recently, somewhere in the middle, got away from that.
Hmm.
But I was still following it just in a different way.
Hmm.
Interviewing people for jobs, I didn't realize how much I was using it until becoming a light worker and going, oh, those people must have hated being interviewed by me because I always asked weird
Hmm.
questions that uncovered things that they may have not been forthcoming in, and it helped us make hiring decisions. And, but yet I put them at ease in the interview because, I can be relational that way. And, it's kind of a killer interview style from a job perspective,
Awesome. Uh-huh.
but I never knew it at the time. I just figured everybody was like that. And so the psychic development circle has really been helpful in my view of helping me really hone in on how those things work. And then getting to the point where it's like, well, they've always worked. Now I'm just a lot more aware of them and when they're kicking in.
Yeah.
So anyway, big long-winded circle around that, but it's just that like you and I'm just very inspired by your free form music. And I would like to give that a try, whether I sing or not, but your audio journaling as well. It's something I use in coaching, but I don't use so much on a regular basis I'm more visual and I do a lot of writing, but I am trying to connect more to the throat chakra and besides my, singing entrainment stuff, just getting the words out and just that you are intuitively connecting to your creativity and voice at the same time is super inspiring. So I really appreciate your sharing that, but also sharing all of your background, your spiritual journey, your connection to a new way of looking at healing and the prayer things that you're working on. I just love your story. So thank you so much, Megan, for sharing. Now we really are at the end of the show. Any last things you'd like to say before we say so long to our guests?
Well, I would just like to give a thanks and praise to the Lightworkers Lab and to the teachers and moderators in the lab, the creator of the lab, Crystal Compton, Lauren Antofuemo, who I've worked with, who is on my list of like my biggest teachers ever in life. I'm just so grateful for her existence and for her courage to be her and what that has brought to this world, to my life, and to all of our lives. And to you, I thank you, and everybody in the lab that I've met, and that especially at the Bliss Retreat, it was amazing to meet people and to hug them, and to I'm just really grateful that this place exists, and I'm excited to see it grow and all of us grow, and it's a big thanks.
Thank you.
And a hug.
You're welcome. And that's nice. I like to do that too. And ditto on all the things that you said about the Lightworkers Lab and all the, and Lauren, love Trisha, love Crystal, love everybody. Everybody I've encountered in the lab has been just supreme. I mean, just really enjoy the energy and the people. So that part will be in the replay that I do. I usually cut out the introduction stuff up until the introduction for you, but that part's going to stay because I think it's a good plug for the Lightworkers Lab because it's such an awesome place.
It is. It really is.
Well, thanks again. And thanks everyone for watching. Yeah. Next, in 2 weeks, my next show, we'll have Lauren Antofuemo. Speak of her, and there she is. So it'll be a really awesome show. It will be her second time. So we'll go a little deeper into a couple of different things. And I wish everyone a wonderful rest of the weekend. And thanks again, Megan. You're awesome.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful rest of your weekend too. Okay, bye.
Thank you. You too. Thanks, everybody. Bye.